Welcome to Powerplayers in Business and Life with Adrienne Richardson, the show where brilliant leaders in business share powerful insider secrets and strategies to succeeding in life and business. Now, here's your host, Adrienne.
Hey everyone, I'm your host, Adrienne Richardson, founder of the Powerplayers in Business and Life podcast, where I get the honor of interviewing fascinating, big-hearted people who have brilliant minds. This episode is brought to you by Powerplay Media. At Powerplay Media, we create and implement strategic marketing plans for service-based business owners who want to scale their companies to 7 or 8 figures and beyond using Facebook and Instagram ads. My team and I offer a premium done-for-you lead generation service for businesses at $1 million in revenue or more, as well as a top-notch mastermind for business owners who want to scale to 7 figures and beyond. For more information about our services, visit wearepowerplay.com today. And now, let me tell you about today's guest. Richie Norton is the award-winning best-selling author of the book, The Power of Starting Something Stupid and Resumes Are Dead and What to Do About It. Earlier this year in 2019, Richie was named one of the world's top 100 business coaches by Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. He's also an international speaker, including TEDx and Google Startup Grind, and a serial entrepreneur. Millions of entrepreneurial-minded people study Richie's blended learning and modular educational programs. Executives and celebrities alike seek out Richie to create new value-based products and experiences for their audiences. Richie also happens to be, in my opinion, the happiest person I know. Even though he's been through many challenges and tragedies in life, he's always finds a way to turn tragedy into triumph. And today I'm honored to have Richie on the show. So hey there, Richie.
You are so nice to me. You're too kind.
You are so nice to me. Every time I see you, I get a smile on my face. And I'm like, that's Richie. You just have a way of making people feel really special.
No, you're awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. This will be fun.
Yeah. And, just like I talked about in your introduction, you're a power player when it comes to, living life to its fullest and not letting fear hold you back. And I want to know, were you always this way, or is this something you learned, or you just wired that way, or tell me more about that.
I don't know. I don't know. I did have, I had great parents that were optimistic, but what's interesting too is, I don't know, everybody's different. Even your brothers and sisters might be different than you. You know what I mean? But I have just done my best to, even when it's hard, look at, actually, as I think about it, not just like the cliche silver lining, I honestly try to think about how I can take my own terrible experiences and then use them to teach someone else how to overcome their terrible experiences. And I'm just thinking this out loud as I'm telling you. We're getting really deep all of a sudden, but I'm realizing it even as you ask the question that I kind of do that. And I think by thinking how my experiences can help others, it does help me to have a more optimistic perspective and try and be happy. But I just smile a lot, and when you smile, sometimes it makes you happy. Sometimes you're hiding behind a smile too, and it can be both, but
yeah, I
don't know. I try not to dwell on the hard things, but I'm realistic too about it. I get how hard it is. I get how hard pain can be. I get how hard so many things are. But at the end of the day, dwelling on that has never served me. So do my best to work through it positively.
Yeah, I love that perspective because I believe, I think that many times all the great things that happen in our lives, they're not just for us, they're also for others. But I think the same thing about the challenging things, right? It may be a lesson for us, but it never gets wasted. And so the things and the challenges that we go through, there's going to be somebody else who goes through that, and they need somebody, right? Somebody that can be there to encourage them and understand them. So I love your perspective on that.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I know you have an amazing book called The Power of Starting Something Stupid.
Yeah.
And I love the title of that. Because most people out there, I think, allow fear, right, to hold them back from starting something, an idea they have. So tell us more about kind of your book and where that idea came from.
One time there's this, she became a mentor of mine later, but she's like a big time CEO and she was speaking and I was just in the back of the room. But I was also kind of like the MC guy. It was at this big conference. Long story short, she was talking about her book, and she said to the crowd, almost like a challenge, she said, how far will your influence go? And this was a long time ago. This is like even before the word influencer was a thing. It wasn't like that. It was literally like, can you intentionally improve the world? That was kind of what I got from it. And the thought came to my mind. I think I might have been 26 at the time. I don't know. The thought came to my mind, write a book. And I was like, I don't know, I like reading books, and I've had mentors that are authors, but that was the thought that came to my mind. So I started doing what other people in the, transformational experience / I don't know, self-improvement, business, entrepreneurial world do. I started looking at what make people successful, but I wanted to take it from a different angle. And I came up with what I saw is that a lot of people were serving people before they actually started the business. And I got into this thing I called START, START, serve, think, ask, receive, and trust. That's the acronym. If you want to start something new, if you want to grow your business, serve others, thank them for the opportunity, ask, earn the right to ask, receive, and don't just not receive. Like some people, let's say in football, the quarterback throws the ball, if a receiver knocks it out of the air on purpose or catches it and puts his knee down for some reason, people will be like, what are you doing? There's a whole team here. Right. Everyone's trying to help you succeed. Receiving means winning. Receiving means taking the ball that someone gave you and running with it towards the end zone, right? Yeah. And then trusting that process. So the book was going to be called The Power of Start. But then I started looking at it even deeper. I realized it was more than just starting something. Some of the wildly most successful people started something stupid. And it wasn't that it was inherently a dumb idea. It was that it hadn't been done before, or they told themselves it was stupid, or they said it was crazy, or it wasn't for them. For some reason, it shouldn't be done. And this includes things like the Model T, like the car. This includes the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell's father-in-law told him it would only be a toy, right? And here we are. We're not talking on a telephone, but we probably wouldn't be talking over the internet.
We wouldn't be here if that didn't happen.
If it wasn't for that, you know what I mean? And then even Twitter, stupidest idea in the world,
140 characters. Who thought of that?
Right? But then all these other things happen from it. So stupid ideas, not just these big ones that we hear about, even little things in your life, like, I don't know, taking the leap to go to college or taking the leap to not go to college, taking the leap to do a job, taking the leap to not do a job. Like all these things in our own minds are stupid ideas. And it's not that they're inherently stupid. It's that we don't think it's for us. Right. And so what I learned is people had to overcome things like fear and their personal pride and their procrastination and kind of break out of that shell and just be real and own it. So when I wrote The Power of Starting Something Stupid, I realized that in writing it, people will be confused because stupid is a weird word to use. But as I went back into history, people were using that and other words like it to describe what they were doing and how people were perceiving them. Right. And even today, venture capitalists, they're not investing in things unless it's something that has traction, but also it's different, and things that are different haven't been done before. Everything smart has been done. Stupid is where creativity lives.
Stupid is where creativity lives.
Yes.
I like that.
Creativity starts at stupid. So while I was writing this, I had a couple big life experiences that you're aware of. My brother-in-law passed away in his sleep at 21. And it was unexpected. He wasn't in the hospital. This just happened randomly. Yeah. And we don't even know why now. But when it happened, it was like, it's obviously a wake-up call for us and tragic. And as I worked through the grief, I started thinking, which I'm still working through, it doesn't go away or something. Right. I realized that life is short. And even though that's cliche, it doesn't make it any less true. Right. Life is short. He will not be 65 and retire and live his dreams, which is what our employers incentivize us to do. Stop your entire life for me for 40 years. Right. Maybe I'll give you 10 to 14 days to go on a vacation. Then when you have all the money in the world, supposedly, you can live your life.
After you've worked for your best, strongest years.
And we think about it now because I mean, 2008 happened. Half of people's retirement disappeared.
Yeah.
Right? This is a real thing for my parents, maybe yours, a lot of people's, like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And so we're also in a different time. Like back in the day, you couldn't work from home necessarily. Now anyone and their mom literally can, right? So times have changed, but to lull yourself to sleep thinking I will be able to have more time in the future wasn't real for my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
And neither is that promise real in real life necessarily, right?
No.
So a few years later, my wife and I had our fourth son, and we named him Gavin after my brother-in-law, Gavin, who had passed away. And this little boy brought so much joy into our lives. And he got this cough, and it was a cough, and we took him to the doctors. They said he'd be fine, but it continued, and we go to the doctor, say it's fine. They thought it was RSV or whatnot, but he'd be okay. Well, one night he was having a hard time breathing, and we go to the doctors, and they're like, well, we haven't checked for pertussis. And so they check for pertussis. And they didn't say that out loud. I'm just going backwards. They check for whooping cough, and he has that.
Oh, wow.
And it's something, it sounds like it's something from the past, and you know, we live in Hawaii, and at the time there was actually I don't know, what do they call it? In California, they actually made it like a thing that there are so many kids that are getting pertussis right now that it was like an emergency kind of thing. And now we know nothing about this. We just are finding out our son caught whooping cough.
Right.
And he was about 3 months old. We were visiting family on the mainland in Utah. We take him to the hospital, and they're like, look, you guys need to stay. And we always were like, well, of course. And we stayed, and we were there for quite some time. And they just pumped him up full of fluids, full of, they put all the wires on him, whatever, to try and keep him alive. And then one night, a nurse says, you guys need to stay the night. And we're like, well, we always stay the night. But she was cluing us in about how serious this was. And despite all of our prayers and all of our pleading with the world and all of our positive thinking, our little boy, they took out all the wires and all the tubes and whatever. My wife, I held him for a moment, handed him to my wife, and we just sang him lullabies. And I had my hand on his heart, and we just waited for those last beats, and he slipped away.
Wow.
And it's your worst nightmare as a parent.
Yeah.
And when it happened, it makes you realize, like, not just the shortness of life, but like how, I don't know, how fragile humanity, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
And we left that hospital empty-handed. And that same woman who I mentioned became my mentor. This is when she said, "How far will your influence go?" None of this had happened. So now, years later, as I'm still thinking about writing this book, as I'm writing it, she says to my wife, when she was visiting, she says, "What did you learn?" And we were kind of taken back, like, "Oh, like, I don't know, like."
Right. What do you mean? What did I learn?
What kind of freaking question is that, right?
Yeah.
And my wife's like, "I don't know, ask me in a year." And I'm like, "I don't know, I made something up." But as I thought about it later, I thought, well, what did I learn from my brother-in-law passing away, from my son passing away? And I came up with what I call Gavin's Law. They're both named Gavin, which is live to start to live. Meaning, when you live to start those ideas that are pressing on your mind, you really will start living. Because there's so many people that are alive but don't feel like it.
Yes.
And I realize it's because they're not acting on that, I don't know, inspiration or thoughts or intuition or whatever that is coming to them. And when you're constantly subduing those ideas, those feelings, that other piece of you, you can't really feel alive, can you? Like you're turning off a piece of you that wants to be.
Yeah.
And when I apply that to business and entrepreneurship, I thought, why are we living our lives for business, sacrificing our lives for a business when a business should be enhancing our life. Why can't our life be enhanced because of the business? Why can't we have more time as a result of what we do for work instead of the other way around?
Right.
Anyway, so as I wrote The Power of Starting Something Stupid, I kind of put in that whole package of not only do you have ideas, not only are they stupid, not only should you do them, but you shouldn't wait. You should do them now because you might not be around tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there becomes what's called a processional effect of everything you do creates something else. And if you wait till you're 65 to do what you want to do and you realize it isn't going to work out because, gosh, you don't have the money you thought you'd have, your spouse is unhealthy, you are unhealthy, any number of factors, the opportunity was missed, that's a big fall to wait 40 years for that.
Yeah.
So it's better to fall and fail. People go, well, what if I fail? I go, well, it'd be better to fail now than later. And learn, right?
Yes.
And change. Why
fail early while there's still time to try something new?
And
try something else.
There is something to say for having false hope. It might get you through, but it's nicer to have like a real hope. You know what I mean? And learn. And so the most successful people I met, the ones that started something stupid, they didn't say, I need more time, more education, more experience, and more money, only to find out they didn't have more time, more education, more experience, and more money. Yeah. They just did it with what they had where they were, and they made that dream happen or not, but then the dream expanded. So over that same 40 years, lots of things happened. Anyways.
No, I love that because, I mean, here's the thing is that most people don't start something. Most people have these hidden passions or desires inside of them, but they either don't share them because they're afraid that someone will tell them that it's stupid. Right. They're afraid of the rejection. But like you also said, they talk themselves out of it because they believe that like, well, I have to go back to school, or I'm not smart enough to do that, or I don't have the right connections to do that. And so there's things that are inside of people that never comes out and never comes to fruition. They don't feel fulfilled or have happiness because they're too afraid to just go for it.
That's right.
And it's like, there's something that, my husband is an electrician, and he's thought many times about going back to school. And, he'll say, well, but I'll be, I'll be 40 by the time I finish my degree. 'Cause my husband's 5 years younger than me. And I'm like, well, you'll be 40 no matter what. The time will go by regardless. And so you can either be 40 with a degree, or you can be 40 and not have a degree and still be in the same position you're in,
No, it's so true.
Yeah. So that's a conversation that he and I talk about a lot, because there's these reasons that people have for not going after something they want. And it is maybe I'm too old. It's too late. I'm too young. I'm not smart enough. I don't live in the right area, whatever those reasons are. And the thing is like, time's going to pass by either way. And eventually you'll run out of time, like you just said.
It's so true. And it's like, it's not even like judgment. It's like, look, it's okay if you don't want to do something and whatever, but if you do, but you're not because of those fears that you mentioned, that's a problem. That's a legit problem. Like, you're missing out, and you're also missing out on helping others. What's interesting, if you really think about it, you and I and everyone listening, we are today who we will be in 5 years. We always think in the future will be better or something will change. Well, actually, we are already that person in 5 years if we don't do something different today. Yeah. Like, we're either going to be the same person or worse unless we do something different and better today. Yeah. That's a scary thought. It doesn't
magically just happen 5 years later, you wake up and you're different, or it's a process. Yeah.
People can, when we say that kind of philosophically and mentally and like in success and in business, it's a little abstract. But then you think about the body and you think about your health. You're like, it becomes a little more real. You're like, oh yeah, I do have to do things differently to change my health. You know what I mean? Like the physical stuff, it's easier to kind of think through. But when you think about like the soft stuff, it's the same, if not even more important, because what you think changes everything. So if you're not thinking differently today, you will be the same person in 5 years, which you probably don't want to be because you want to improve. So you step into the stupid ideas, and that makes you this next version, better version, potentially, of you.
Yeah. I was reading some reviews on your book, and one of them, her name was Gina. She said, "Stupid is the new smart, and you're just one idea away from success."
Mm.
And I loved that stupid is the new smart, because like we were just saying, it's like you think like you have this thing that you want to do, and is it stupid? But it's like, but the stupid is smart. And she mentioned in her review that like every great idea that was so brilliant that I ever had, it didn't work out. But like the ideas that I thought, this is a little crazy, this might not work, but let's go for it, are like where the greatest things came from. And I just think that is so true in business. And a lot of times business owners, I think, will ignore that voice. You know, it's like, well, we could do this, but it's kind of a little bit stupid and a little bit crazy. And sometimes you just got to go for it, right?
That's
because
so true.
you just could be one idea away from success.
It's so true. And people listening to this, they might be thinking, okay, what's my next stupid idea? When I try to help people think through that in different ways, but when I speak to audiences, sometimes I'll say, what's something that you thought was stupid that turned out to be great? Mm-hmm. And people then, with that paradigm, they look backwards and they go, oh, and then everyone, I have them share with their neighbor, and then I have someone stand up and share what they learned or whatever. But like everyone has a story of, they go, people told me not to do this, I did it, it was great.
Yeah.
And it's not always that way. But the fact that doing the same thing you're doing now will never change you, and the fact that your stupid idea may or may not inherently be stupid, but you know it's something you want, by moving towards that, it will change you inside and out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you just said, you know, you asked them to go back and say, well, how many other times in your life did you have a stupid idea and it worked out? And this is a tool that I use with my children all the time, is I'll ask them, what evidence do you have? Right. And so when they'll tell me like, well, this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, you know, they're going down like this negative thing. And I'm like, well, how many times has that happened in the past? How many times have you forgotten to do your homework, and then that meant you failed a test?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, well, never. And I'm like, okay, so it's never happened in the past. So what is the likelihood of it happening in the future? And, you know, of course, always, I know things can change, but I'm always asking, going back to like, well, what has happened in the past? Or my daughter, she's an introvert, and, you know, she wants to try new things, but she's afraid. And so I'll say, well, how many times in the past have you tried something new, a new class, a new group, a new whatever, and you were really scared, but you did it anyways, and it turned out really well? Like, how many times has that happened in the past? And she'll be like, every time. And I'm like, and that's what's going to happen this time too.
Yep.
And so I love that, you know, I think people, that helps a lot when you can, whether it's you're looking for the negative or the positive or whatever it is, it's like, what evidence do you have to support that? And because, you know, a good indicator of the future is the past, which, you know, we were just talking about, unless you take steps to change the future. But
That's so true.
I love that.
That's so true. I love the thought. Maybe a lot of people listening to this are also, maybe they have kids. I love the thought of thinking like how we parent our kids when our kids are afraid to do something, and they're thinking, maybe not specifically, but they might think this is a bad idea. Mm-hmm. You know, everything from learning to swim, to walk, to just helping them in sports, to doing well on a test, or whatever it is. We are them. Yes. We're just a taller version.
Yes, a little bit more life experience.
Right? Oh my gosh. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when, you know, I'd like to know a little bit more. You don't have to, you know, tell us all of your deepest, darkest secrets, but I'd love to know a little bit about, you know, if someone has an idea, you know, is there something that they can do that would, and when I say idea, like, let's try to keep this. Now, some people may have ideas to start a business, but a lot of people listening to this podcast, they already have a business. And we don't just get our ideas when we're starting a business. Ideas will often come up all the time when we're running a business, an idea on how to create something new within the company, or a way to change something, or a way to solve the problem. And so I'm wondering if you mentioned earlier your START method, but is there something that you recommend for people when they're evaluating, like, is this really is a stupid idea? Because like, there's a difference between stupid, and stupid smart, I think. Yep. Or maybe not, maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
But like, how do you evaluate? Is it like, is this stupid because it's kind of crazy and we should go for it? Or is this like really not a good idea?
No, that's a good question. And it's multifaceted. Let me just say the answer is like straight up, and then I'll explain a little bit more how, is to get one. Meaning you have an idea. Well, we were taught to think big. We're taught to have big goals. Fantastic. But that usually, let's be honest, prevents us from starting at all because it's so much work.
Yeah.
So let's bring it back to, like, say, getting one client. When someone says, I'm going to leave my job and start a coaching business, okay, I mean, I don't know if you're going to do it or not, but you don't necessarily have to leave your business. Go get one. Go enroll one person. See it all the way through from beginning to end. If you like it, cool. If you don't do it anymore. And so same thing at work. If you have an idea, go try it in one place with one person. Minimize the risk. Do it once. You don't have to roll out an idea to the whole company overnight or over time. Do a little experiment. If it works, move forward. If it doesn't, move on. So I tend to call the things I want to do projects. Because a project, instead of a business, because a project has a beginning and an end. A project can without falling on your face necessarily.
Well, shutting down your whole business.
Exactly. And so let's use just a random example. If someone says, I want to be an author, well, someone might say, no, you should say, I am an author. You go, an author is right. And you go, okay, cool. Well, what if you said, I have a book project, or I have a book that I'm working on? Or what if you said, I'm writing a book? And there's different levels of thinking depending on how you say that. Like if I say I'm writing a book, I might be like, am I though? If I say I have a book project, I do. Doesn't mean it started or not necessarily.
Right.
So with projects, you can test your stupid idea out, get your feet wet, and you can actually complete it, and you can improve it or not do it anymore. And then as far as there's an abundance of choices, I like to use so Jeff Bezos, when he was starting Amazon, he looked back and discussed why and how he started it. And he created something he calls the regret minimization framework, or something crazy like that.
I've read some of his stuff. I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the exact name either.
Yeah. So he was walking around with his boss. I think he's around 30 years old or something, in Central Park. He tells his boss that he had this idea to start selling books online. He sees that the internet's doing crazy things. And I think it was like a 3-hour long conversation from what I read. And his boss says, that's a great idea, but not for somebody who already has a job. So instantly it became a good idea that's now stupid. Right? But the way he decided to do it was he asked himself, will I regret it when I'm 80? Will I regret not doing this thing when I'm 80? And because he told himself he quit his job in the middle of the year, which meant he wouldn't get his annual bonus from being in the whatever financial world he was at, gets a loan from family, and travels across the country with his spouse, and they together create Amazon.
Wow.
This happened because of a question, will I regret it in the future, basically. Right. So when someone's trying to decide what stupid idea, how should I do it, what not, I say, first of all, you're thinking big, that's great, go get one and then talk to me. And then two, do it as a project to kind of reduce the risk of feeling like a failure if it doesn't work out. Which will actually help you succeed, by the way. And if you're
pressure of this has to work or my family's not going to eat.
That's
right?
Exactly. And then if you have multiple ideas, you're really struggling to know if you should do it or not. Well, if you're not going to regret it in the future, then don't do it. But if you would, then you can bring your future to the present, literally. And you just saved yourself years of worry and regret, and you made something magical.
Yeah.
That's how.
I love that. I love that so much, because a lot of people are afraid to start a business, or because they're like, well, then that means I have to quit my job, or I have to leave this behind. And I love the get one. And like you said, it applies in so many different ways. That if you want to try out something new within your business, I do this when I test ads. I want to test something new. I don't turn off every single ad I'm running. I try it with one thing while the other things that work still are running.
That's a great example.
You know what I'm saying? And then if it works, great, let's do more of it. If it doesn't, no problem. There was no harm, no foul, right?
No, that's right. I had a mentor teach me, he said this, he said, ask a better question, get a better answer. And this would work for ads. It works for anything. It's just a principle. But like this, people are always thinking either or. If I do this, then I can't do that, which is true if that's the way you think. But if you thought, how could I do this and continue to do that without this terrible thing happening, or with this great thing happening? The question creates a space for an answer.
Yeah.
So it's something to think about. Even with your ads, you're like, if I do this, then this has to happen. Well, what if I couldn't? People are afraid to ask the ideal situation question because they don't think it's possible. So they go to a subpar question or statement, and that's how they live their life. I don't know if that makes sense, but like if they would just say, what if this and this were possible without having to sacrifice my time and my family and this?
Right.
Well, then the fact that you asked the question makes it possible. It wasn't possible before you thought it.
Yeah. And what it does too is like I briefly just mentioned, is like it relieves the stress and the pressure that like this has to work or else. Because what happens when we put that kind of pressure on us or put ourselves in that situation is we're making decisions from a panic state instead of from a state where things are calm and we can see clearly. And when we're panicked or we're stressed, we're not thinking clearly. We might take actions to change something that we normally wouldn't change, or vice versa. And so with the just one, whether it's like you already run a business and you want to try something new, it's like get one. And if that didn't work, your whole entire company doesn't fall apart,
Wow. Yep.
There's so many, I always say I like to try new things when things are great, right? Like when everything's great, what's funny is I feel like when everything's great in people's lives, or when we take the least amount of risk, and try the least amount of new things for a lot of people. And it's only when like life is really hard, everything's going wrong, and you have to figure out a solution is when like the grit and the hustle comes in and people solve a problem. But I like to look at things when everything's going great. And when I'm not in a panic state or a state of stress, and say, okay, well, what could I do now that I could test or I could try? Because if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world, because everything's great. Yeah. Like things are working in my business. So I like to test, new things when everything's great within the company and there's not pressure on that, versus when it's like, oh, we're in dire straits and we have to do this, or it's not, or, we're in trouble.
No, I like that. That's good. That's good.
That's so good. So we've talked about so much today.
We went pretty deep into like lots of different spaces.
We just went like straight deep, then took a right hook to the book and all around. I would love to know, Richie, Powerplayers, they set their goals high. They put their focus and energy on achieving them. And I'd love to know what you're working on right now that excites you.
Oh, that's nice of you. One thing is I do have another book. It probably won't come out for a year or two. I like to work with traditional publishers in addition to whatever I'm self-publishing. So my next one's going to be called, the working title is Time Tipping, and it will be about how your work can create time, not take time, moving from distraction to action. Basically, it's the anti-time management book that actually gives you your time back.
Wow. That's going to be awesome because, you said earlier you were talking about, we sacrifice our lives for work, and we work so much and we barely have time to live our lives. And I've watched you over the years that I've known you and what you share on social media, and just watched you travel the world with your family, and obviously still at the same time running a very successful business. But a lot of people think that isn't possible for them. They're like, well, Richie can do that, or Adrienne can do that, but I can't do that, and so what would you say to somebody like that who thinks that they're not in the situation where they have the opportunity to do that?
Yeah. If I were a mean person, I'd say, well, if you think that way, you're right.
Yes. We say that first.
but as a nice person, I'd say all of us started where you are right now. Yeah. And then they might say, like, you and I met, well, we're just kind of starting out doing stuff too. You know what I mean? Like, and someone might say, yeah, but you had this and you had that. And you go, I could say, well, you have this and you have that. Yeah. At the end of the day, you have to take 100% responsibility for your life. That is the end of it. Yeah. Because no one has the same stuff. Everyone has a different upbringing. even the rich people will say, I had a rich mom and dad. That means no one takes me seriously because I can't make it on my own.
Right.
And then the person with no money says, I can't make it because I have no money. And then
I didn't have a family member who gave me money.
See what I'm saying? Like, it's like, forget all that. Do one thing once and then see where it goes, and then do it again. Because if you can do it once, just like getting a client, if you can get 1, you can get 10. If you can get 10, you can get 100. And it might take some time.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can fast forward that and whatever works. But it starts with 1. And that's what I would say. Start with 1, you know.
Awesome.
I'd also say
the time tipping book.
Yeah.
That's going to be exciting. I can't wait. I can't wait to read that.
It'll be well. So you're one of the first to ever know, by the way. So
awesome.
Thank you. And then I've been on a lot of podcasts as a guest, but I've never done my own podcast. So I'm working on one that I'll launch next year. And so I'm really excited about that, and just kind of like you sharing, with people, interviewing people, and just kind of digging deep into like the things that are important to me in my community and giving them more value. So super excited for that. It'll be called the Richie Norton Show. And I hope to be as good of a podcaster as you are, because you're amazing.
Thank you, Richie. So
I do have a place people can go. It's called, my son lived for 76 days. So, and by the way, as we're recording this, I know things are distributed later, but yesterday happened to be his birthday. So it's a special time for us as we think, through that. But he lived for 76 days. And so I try to do my goals in that time period. And I have a thing called the 76-day challenge. Tens of thousands of people have taken it and been successful. It's called richienorton.com/76day challenge. And if you go there, it's a free guide, takes you by the hand, and helps you kind of take and discover your own stupid idea and then make it happen with using some of these principles and others that we talked about today.
Wow. All right. So the 76-day challenge, richienorton.com/76day challenge. Is that correct?
That's right.
Awesome. And we've got the podcast coming out soon, the book that'll come eventually.
There's so much. We don't need to talk about it. But when we met, I wrote The Power of Starting Something Stupid, and I was working on my business model to do high ticket selling, and I'm doing that. But what's been happening too is people have been asking me to help them make stuff. So now my company, Proud UCT, PROUDUCT.com, we're making everything from like this new thing called the Switch Pod for Pat Flynn. I'm making John Lee Dumas's journals. We're making yoga pants. We're making tops. We're making like full-on fashion lines, and I don't know how to do any of this. That's the funny part of it, but I do know how to make it happen. I'm not you know what I mean? And we do it successfully, and that's the way anyone can do it. If you have an idea and believe you can, you will gather the right people over time to make it work, and you can be the architect. You don't have to be the builder to be the architect,
Yeah, that's great. I truly believe, like, one of my things that have gotten me through lots of hard challenges in life is that I believe wholeheartedly that there isn't any problem I can't solve, either through my own knowledge or through the people that I know.
That's right.
Their knowledge. And so whenever there's a challenge that comes up in my life, no matter how big or how small, I look at it and go, okay, either what do I have or know that can solve this, or who do I know? And so I love that you're not relying on your own. Sometimes we feel like we don't know enough about something to move forward. And so I love that you mentioned, it's also about who do you know that can help you move through this, because none of us need to do this alone.
That's right. You're amazing. This is great.
Richie, thank you so much. I just can't thank you enough for being here today. I thank you for being very vulnerable with the audience, for opening up and just really sharing. I know that's incredibly hard things you've been through, and I just think you're such an amazing human being, and I love just talking to you and being around you, and I thank you so much for being here today. No,
you're welcome. I just want to say one more thing for you. Like, anyone, I've known Adrienne for a while. She's amazing. You can trust her. Anything she's doing, selling, freaking buy it. She's legit.
You're awesome, Richie.
Cool. All right, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Power Players in Business and Life. Be sure to click subscribe. To learn more about Adrienne, visit www.wearepowerplay.com. We'll see you next time.